This is by the Telegraph on Yahoo News. Hackers changed Brigitte Macron's gender to male on tax forms. Brigitte Macron was given a male name on her personal tax record by a team of hackers, a French government official has said. The 72-year-old First Lady of France has long been the subject of rumors questioning her gender, which have been shared by conspiracy theorists and social media influencers online for several years. First of all, I'm going to stop right there. Everybody knows about this book, right? I'm going to show you, because Candace Owens is technically mainstream media and her husband's worth almost $300 million. She's worth almost $6 million herself. This book is based on an investigation by a French man named Xavier Poussard. He worked over 8 years, close to a decade, on this, including fighting the French government. Candace Owens has backed his investigation by taking his investigation, his book, and they translated it to English. And it says, Candace Owens presents an investigation by Xavier Poussard. Now, when she backed this and put her entire career and professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron was really born Jean-Michel Trogneau, and has taken the identity of her younger sister, his younger sister, there is a lot of factual evidence, because Xavier Poussard did almost 10 years of very hard work, and he didn't make the mistake that other journalists had made, some of which ended up having to leave France. Some of them ended up deceased magically. Some of them were sued into oblivion. But if you look and have read this book, and I have read it 3 times, Xavier Poussard has very definitive proof in this book, including where he had to fight for years the French government for these class photos of Jean-Michel Trogneau and the military records, because at the time, all 18-year-old biological men had to register for military service. And with that said, the military records of Jean-Michel Trogneau were very hard for him to obtain. Same thing with class photos, meaning that the real Jean-Michel Trogneau clearly was trying to have these sealed, suppressed for a reason. That is Jean-Michel Trogneau. Right there. In that class photo, then I believe this is him right here in this class photo. He did something that no other journalist doing a biography on the Macrons had ever done. He used the best facial recognition software, and it's a Chinese-based facial recognition software, and he used every single photograph that the French had been presented as being photos of Brigitte Macron when she was younger, and took actual pictures that are known of Jean-Michel Trogneau and compared them to who they said was really her brother, but is not. Simple blood test is all it takes. Also, the photoshopping of the pictures, a lot of that, But this is where Xavier Poussard has definitive proof with all the military records. This is Jean-Michel Trogneau. He was trying to be deferred from military service, and I don't know if he had been deferred or not, but this is a photograph of Jean-Michel Trogneau when he had to register for mandatory military service. This is Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France. This investigation took Took almost a decade by Xavier Poussard. Over 8 years. Candace Owens has basically brought it to her mainstream audience, her English-speaking mainstream audience, which helped push this investigation into the mainstream and social media worlds. And there's also lots of other information, like how Emmanuel Macron, somebody who was not even educated, how did he start working at the Rothschild Bank, and his connections to David D. Rothschild, and without even having the education or the ability to pass tests to even work at a bank like that, how he became the youngest person to be chief of staff at 31 at the Elysee Palace, which is, where the president of France would reside. But this entire book is very thorough. Xavier Poussard did not make the same mistake that other journalists doing biographies on the Macrons had made. So, continuing on from there, the rumor falsely claims that Mrs. Macron was born a male and that her real name is Jean-Michel Trogneau. In reality, her maiden name is Trogneau, and that she has a brother called Jean-Michel. Prove it. I mean, she's never actually proved it. And see, here's the messed up thing. This is what they call the Streisand effect. When Barbara Streisand tried to sue because they took aerial photographs of her house and only like 6 people had seen the photograph. And then after this big scandal of suing and making a big deal about this picture, then like all 8 billion people on planet Earth had to see this photograph and then sought that photograph out. Had she just left it alone, only 6 people would have seen it. It's kind of the same thing here. Nobody cares that the First Lady of France is transgender. But what people do care about is that when you are a sitting president of a nation, the sitting president of a foreign nation to everybody else, and you are lying to your constituents, that's a pretty big deal. Yeah, you have the right to privacy, but at what point does the public, do those constituents have the right to honesty and transparency? Had they just come out and said, yeah, she's trans, born biological male, trans woman, I'm pretty sure nobody would care, and none of this would have happened. Candace Owens, if you didn't know, has been sued by Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron. But what a lot of people don't know is that Xavier Poussard is also being sued. Now, he left France and allegedly went to move and live his life now in Spain because he didn't want to be in France, afraid for his own safety after what had happened to other journalists covering Emmanuel and Brigitte, who were said to have met at 17 and 39 when he was a student and she was a teacher. We now know for a fact, because of thank you, Xavier Poussard, and your hard work, he was 14 and she was 39. And this comes after he had been married to a woman and had his own biological children. However, what they can't say is, where is the real Brigitte Macron? Where is the real sister? Because either which way, if you're stealing somebody's identity, even with their permission, that's still illegal, even in France. And if you stole somebody's identity after they're deceased without their permission, that's still stealing somebody's identity. And that's not allowed. Also, they claim to have been legally married in 2007. It was not legal for same-sex couples to get married in France until, I believe, 2013, which would have rendered their marriage null and void. If Xavier Poussard is correct, and that Brigitte Macron really is Jean-Michel Trogneau. The smear campaign went as far as hacking into her personal tax account and changing her name to Jean-Michel, also known as Brigitte Macron, according to Tristan Bromet, chief of staff to Miss Macron. He had made the revelation in an interview, a French news channel called BFM-TV, in which he recounted how the French president's wife was stunned to see that her legal name had been changed when she logged into her personal tax account. And here is an example of that. Jean-Michel de Brigitte Macron. We were completely surprised, Mr. Bromet, who has worked with Mrs. Macron since 2017, said, and if you don't know this, here in America, the French presidency is a term of 5 years. So I believe that Emmanuel Macron is on his second term, and he doesn't have but I think a year and a half or so left of that, and then he's done. But so they could have just rode this out and let this go, but I think Brigitte Macron can't let it go. There's something weird going on here, no matter what you believe, but the truth is the truth. She also had said a couple weeks ago in the mainstream media that she has medical documents, that she has medical records, testing, and that she has not only offered them to the court in the lawsuit against Candace Owens. And if you don't remember, Candace Owens sat down with Tucker Carlson and said she absolutely does not want this lawsuit dismissed. And Tucker Carlson said, well, that's weird. I've never heard anybody said, hey, like, this person has this $400 million lawsuit against me. I don't want it dismissed. And Candace said, no, because I want to make it to discovery, because I want at least to have this medical proof. Pictures of her pregnant, pictures of her after she gave birth to her children, any of those things. Now, here's the really, really messed up part about this. They have said, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, and his wife, Brigitte Macron, have said that they have given Candace Owens that information in those photographs, and she refused to cover it on her YouTube channel. However, she has told everybody, her audience, that they refused to answer a series of 20 questions. She never said that they gave over documents and pictures, and she never showed them. However, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, he says, oh my God, that's amazing. I can't wait, because Candace Owens is basically putting it out there to the public and to audiences that I know I'm right, and I'm going to be proven right by the end of this lawsuit, and they are not going to have a lawsuit against me. In fact, she said she did not want it dismissed. However, do you know what her attorneys very quietly did not that long ago? This is why I linked it in my other video. They filed for a dismissal, and she was claiming several different things like change of venue or inappropriate venue. Delaware, that is where Candace Owens LLC is listed and based, like all LLCs in the United States. She also tried to say that it's a free speech issue, but free speech doesn't cover lies, threats, stalking, lies that amount to defamation, doxing, anything like that. It covers your thoughts, feelings, opinions, expressions, critiques, criticisms, and that's it. And there's a very fine line there. So she says that she doesn't want it dismissed, but then her lawyers asked for it to be dismissed. But they also tried to argue, and this is why I linked the filing for people to read, and they were very shocked that Candace Owens has not addressed this or been honest about this with her audience. And this is where I really get to, there's gaslighting and manipulation there for a reason. But they were very shocked that she also had tried to say that the French, another foreign entity, has no right or jurisdiction over an American citizen and their right to free speech. However, if you look at this family photo, this is who Brigitte is claiming she is. But this is Jean-Michel Trogneau. And there is a lot of solid evidence. But you're not seeing all over the internet how Xavier Poussard is being sued by the Macrons as well. So there's that. And also AI has started to pick up on the fact that there is definitive proof to prove that Brigitte Macron is really Jean-Michel Trogneau. There have been other evidences and pictures and documents that have come forward that she has tried to scrub and bury, but it's just not possible. And there's different laws in France regarding some of the things that Xavier Poussard had fought the French government, because after 50 years, those pictures have to be released. It's like a kind of like the Sunshine request, kind of like the Freedom of Information Act request here in the United States, that should be available to anybody. But the fact that those were sealed is kind of odd, because most people, deceased or alive, aren't going and purposely having their records sealed. Why are they sealing the records of Jean-Michel Trogneau, but none of the other siblings? It can be argued that Brigitte Macron is Jean-Michel Trogneau and knows that she transitioned in her late 30s. And the reason why she went back and was hiding who she was because she was now assuming her younger sister's identity. The only thing we don't know is if Jean-Michel Trogneau is really pretending to be Brigitte Macron. Where is the real Brigitte Macron? Is there a payoff? Did she assume a different identity as well so her brother can legally take hers? Either which way, it's all a crime. It's all a crime. But again, if Candace Owens is wrong about this, if Xavier Poussard is wrong about this, there is some very damning evidence that proves that conclusion. They just can't say how, when, why, or where the real Brigitte Macron is. Now, it says that Mrs. Macron filed a complaint about 2 people involved in the hacking that have been identified. They did not indicate when the incident occurred. The interview is a part of a documentary broadcast on Sunday night ahead of trial starting Monday in Paris criminal court, where 8 men and 2 women will face allegation of sexist cyberbullying against Mrs. Macron. And that she has been very good at doing. But you know, things like look at Michelle Obama. She has had a ton of bullying and conspiracy theories put out there that she is a trans woman as well, and you don't see her reacting this way. The fact that they're like the Macrons have so strategically tried to control the public and control information and sue people into oblivion to where they have no money, no access to anything, is kind of like why it's like the Streisand effect. Why are you going to this point? If it's the truth that you really are a biological female, it is that simple. Go right in front of a court, prick your finger, take a blood sample, have a doctor come in there and take a sample and literally just be tested. Or better yet, you can just so easily bring your brothers and sisters in there and you guys can all get tested. And you could have put this to bed years ago. But the fact that it's dancing around it is weird to me. And this is not any credit to Candace Owens. This is credit to Xavier Poussard. All she did was say, hey, look, I got almost 8 million followers on X. I got 5.5 million over on YouTube. I have a mainstream audience. Let's bring it to my mainstream audience. I'll present the investigation in English. And at the very last episode, I'll interview you. And you can, tell us about how you've done this for 10 years. So it's very misleading because people believe that Candace Owens is the one that did this investigation. She did not. She just presented it in English to a mainstream audience and backed Xavier Poussard. So it says that Emmanuel Macron and the First Lady have also filed a separate lawsuit against Candace Owens, a far-right American influencer and longtime Trump supporter who produced an 8-part podcast series falsely claiming that Mrs. Macron is transgender. So if she really is she going to provide like doctored medical evidence or proof? I don't know. But see, here's the thing. If she would have just said, yes, I'm a trans woman, nobody would have cared. It's the fact that you spent almost 10 years lying to your French constituents. Europe, now an English-speaking world that knows all about this. Asia, the Middle East. It's crazy. When you are an elected official, you have every obligation to be honest. And you know what? Nothing would have been more liberal than saying, yeah, I'm this. So what? I can be this and still be the first one to ever be the French First Lady. Do you have any idea how much different that could have went? How much more accepting people could be of trans people? But if it's not true, and Brigitte Macron just happened to look an awful exact like her one brother, Jean-Michel, and she really is Brigitte Trogneau, married Brigitte Macron, then it's going to be pretty damning for Candace Owens and Xavier Poussard. But they don't mention that lawsuit against Xavier Poussard as much as Candace Owens, so people are thinking that this is her investigation. It is not. She is piggyback riding off of Xavier Poussard's almost decade worth of work, fighting the French government for over 3 years to be able to obtain class photos and records that should have already been free for anybody to get copies of or request. So it says the defendants in Monday's trial include an elected official, gallery owner, teacher, medium, and computer scientist, ranging in age from 41 to 60. They are accused of making numerous malicious comments about the First Lady and equating the age difference with her husband, who is 24 years her junior, with pedophilia. But it is. because you started messing with Emmanuel Macron when he was 14 and you were 39. So much so that his mother and father had to pull him away. And then we saw getting off of a plane when that door opened and he got double smacked in his face by his wife. You're not going to sit here and tell me that either which way, trans woman or not trans woman, it's not the point. It's the lying as a president and a first lady, the lying to your constituents, lying to Europe, and then trying to present this relationship as if it's this for the ages love story. It's not. It's not. It's giving Mary Kay Letourneau, right? And Vili Falau. That's what it's giving. 14-year-old student with 39-year-old teacher. A 41-year-old advertising executive posted under the pseudonym Zoe Sagan was identified as one of the alleged spreaders of lies and conspiracy theories. But you don't know that. How amazing is it going to be? If she wanted to disprove it, Brigitte Macron, if you wanted to prove that you're a born biological female, all you had to do was get online and publish the stuff yourself. Here's me pregnant. Here's me holding my children at the hospital. Here is my medical document where it says I am XX or XY chromosome. Like, it would have been that simple. They're making it a bigger deal than what it should be. I mean, it's so easy to prove or disprove. He is also accused of sharing explicit videos. It's the president's mayoral candidate for Paris in 2020 who was forced to withdraw from the race after being accused of sending sexual consent to a woman who is not his wife. Oh, yep. So France has just got a whole bunch of weirdo pedophiles, cheaters, adulterers. Do you guys, when the French had a monarchy, they had been a very devout Catholic monarchy for many, many years. Of course, they overlooked anytime a king wanted to have a whole bunch of mistresses and illegitimate children. But you thinking today, since obviously the French Revolution, thinking today about elected officials and people that are in positions of power, you should be setting the best example of how to live a righteous, God-fearing life for your constituents. And you can't even do that without sending sexually explicit content to a woman who's not your wife. Today, in today's day and age, you are always going to be found out if you do shit like that. After being cleared of defamation charges by a French court in July, Delphine Gerbus, 51, who went by a pseudonym, Amandine Roy, as a clairvoyant, will also be back in court this week to respond to cyberbullying charges. Now, in 2021, she and Natasha Ray, a self-described journalist, falsely claimed. Now, they're going after Natasha Ray because that is the journalist that Xavier Poussard had picked up really on what she did. And the one itty-bitty mistake that she had said, and completed his investigation into her original claims. Now, remember, at this time, Emmanuel Macron was running for the presidency, and he's almost done with his second 5-year term. So, Natasha Ray, a self-described journalist, falsely claimed Mrs. Macron was a man and described the First Lady as a swindle, deception, and state lie while sharing photos of her and her family in a 4-hour YouTube video. The rumors resurfaced in the U.S. earlier this year when Mrs. Owens' podcast series Becoming Brigitte garnered millions of views on YouTube. To put the false story to rest once and for all, the couple's lawyer said Mrs. Macron would present photographic and scientific evidence to an American court to prove that she is a biological woman. We're prepared to demonstrate fully, both generically and specifically. That sounds too much like genetically, but it says generically. I see what you're doing there with that trick wording, but that's what you need to do is provide genetic medical proof. Generic and specifically that what she's saying about Brigitte Macron is false. Tom Clare, the couple's lawyer, said on the BBC's Fame Under Fire podcast, he said, it's a process that she will have to subject herself to in a very public way, but she's willing to do it. She is firmly resolved to do what it takes to set the record straight. There's only the truth. Setting a record straight doesn't need to happen. What needs to happen is the truth needs to be told. And the truth should have been told from day one that Emmanuel Macron was running for the French presidency. It should have been told to the French constituents. The truth. Only the truth and nothing but the truth. Or they wouldn't have found themselves in this situation today. This article right here says French President Emmanuel Macron, his wife, hired private eye to dig into Candace Owens' report. The French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte reportedly hired a private investigator to dig into American podcaster Candace Owens before suing her over claims that they describe as baseless and defamatory, including the allegation that the First Lady was born a male. But it's not defamation if it's true, right? So before they brought the lawsuit, they were trying to stalk Candace Owens? I mean, I don't agree with that, no matter how unhinged Candace Owens is today. But, let's see here. This is the filing. And this was e-filed September 26th of 2025. And, of course, she's trying to have it, dismissed. And these are all the pages for that. I have linked this below for people in several of my videos for you to understand, what was happening with this lawsuit and the pages. I know the original filing was like 200 plus pages. And then Candace Owens was trying to have it dismissed. So there's all of this. It's even including exhibits that were submitted like this. A man, period. I mean, you cannot tell me that is not a bad motherfucking wig, because ain't no 70-year-old have hair that thick. I'm going to be 40 in November, and my hair has always been very thick, and my hair is not that thick. That is a wig. Take that wig off. That is a horrible wig. Get a new wig. Wait a minute. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I backtrack. Macrons take legal action against persistent transgender rumors. Okay. It says that Paris, France. Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron are fighting back against a years-long rumor and claims that the First Lady is a transgender man. Well, she would be born a biological man, but a transgender woman. The unfounded claim, which originated with conspiracy theorists, it wasn't. It was based off of Xavier Poussard's almost 10-year-long investigation and very hard work into this. And he has pretty solid proof that I would agree with him. In all honesty, I've read it 3 times. And it's not about the transgender issue. It's about being the president, a sitting president of a foreign nation, of any nation, lying to your constituents. Huge missed opportunity there. Huge missed opportunity to really pave the way, if she really is Jean-Michel Trogneau, to really pave the way and to be a liberal country that can show just how a trans woman can truly inhabit a woman's role, like the First Lady. But that's whatever on them. The unfounded claim, which originated with conspiracy theorists, gained traction internationally, prompting the couple to pursue legal action in France and the United States. Okay, now it talks about how they hired a private investigator. Okay, the rumor first surfaced in December of 2021 when a self-proclaimed amateur journalist published a video that falsely alleged Brigitte Macron was actually her brother Jean-Michel. Despite several rebuttals, the story has not lost its momentum, amplifying on social media platforms and reaching audiences beyond France, because Xavier Poussard took Natasha Ray's investigation and had been working for over 8 years to go even deeper before he presented it. And then Candace Owens got wind of it and presented it to a mainstream and English-speaking audience. This is not in French. This is in English, this copy, which I'm sure they can translate and transcribe into any language. Now, it says that Emmanuel Macron described the claims as absurd and one of his worst memories during his presidency. Why? The Obamas went through the same kind of thing. Do you think that they sat there and worried about that? If it's not true, it's not true. And giving all of this is all of it, constantly suing, constantly having all these issues. This is giving life to something that they say is not true, to the point where people are going to believe it. And, well, this pretty much proves it. He just cannot prove where the real Brigitte Macron is. Dead, alive, paid off, not paid off, knowingly let her brother use her identity or not. That's the one thing that has not been answered. Now let's go down here. It didn't begin with Candace Owens. That is a fact. It says, okay, while addressing the legal repercussions, okay, Nardello noted that Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron have yet to directly sue Xavier Poussard. I apologize for that. The primary source of Owens' information and investigation. The inaction stems from concerns over the likelihood of success in French courts. Okay, I had read an article that a couple months ago when they had sued Candace Owens that they were going to sue Xavier Poussard, but they may have had issues or legal technicalities over that because Xavier Poussard, although he is French, is no longer living in France. And several years ago, he had moved to Spain, from my understanding, for his own safety because of an almost decade-long investigation against his own country's president. Could you imagine if somebody worked almost 10 years looking into Melania Trump and finding out that they had lied not just during one term, but a second term, about her really being a biological female, being the first lady of the United States? I mean, that would scare anybody to want to leave the United States, especially if you're going to publish that and you have somebody on the other side of the globe helping you push that in a different language to a mainstream audience. So people do know and are aware. So that way they can't keep, these journalists that look into the Macrons can't just disappear. Oh, they end up in the CN floating down the river. I wonder how that happened. Oh, because they found information that wasn't what the Macrons want. So you're either doing what they want or you don't. So I guess that didn't go anywhere. And it says the legal battle unfolds, and the Macrons continue to deal with personal and public repercussions of this persistent rumor. A trial set for October 27th in Paris regarding charges of online harassment stemming from the attacks against Brigitte Macron, further complicating the couple's attempts to move past the scandal. So the last article that I had checked, like over a month and a half ago, it said that they were for sure going to sue Xavier Poussard. But I had been waiting to see if that could drop or if we actually are going to be able to get a copy of that or if that even happened. But I guess they have not been able to do that because he doesn't live in France. So that right there makes sense. He no longer lives. He allegedly lives in Spain and he's a resident of Spain. So that's probably why they can't sue him for defamation in France. Maybe they're still looking into trying to sue him, but he is the source of all of the information that Candace Owens bases all of her claims on. So I just find the thing with the Macrons extremely weird. She could have put this to bed and these rumors wouldn't have persisted. In fact, I'm starting to think that they wanted these rumors to persist because I don't even know if this lawsuit against Candace Owens is going to be finished or even settled or done by the time Emmanuel Macron is done with his second term. But it's making me wonder because it really seems to me like somebody that has a lot of success online, especially when they're selling you that I'm this truth teller, that I'm this truth seeker, and that I'm fighting the big bad machine that she chooses to be a part of. It makes you wonder how much of this is staged and set up just to drive more conspiracy. But I would say that can't be true because Xavier Poussard certainly did a lot of hard work, a lot of homework, and he not only double, triple, verified and corroborated his own information and to be absolutely sure that there was no way that they could sue him for defamation. And maybe, just maybe, because he's telling the truth, That's why they have not been able to finally file that lawsuit against him. So there's that. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. I love you all. I'm going to go cook dinner, and then I am going to go lay down. Love you.